Om Sri Sai Ram. Hearty welcome to Sri Sathya Seva Gurukulam online classes. Today's topic is about chemical bonding. So the word bonding you have heard in many places. Before you come to today's topic, let us just think of the topics we have already studied in the previous class. We know what are atoms. What are atoms? Atoms are the smallest particles of elements. We say sodium atom, chlorine atom, is it not? So, the smallest particle. And what are molecules? Two or more atoms of the same element or of different elements combined together form a molecule. We call it as, for example, we call water, which is formed by the combination of hydrogen and oxygen. We call it as water molecule, and we write it as H2O. We write it as H2O. So, H2O stands for water molecule, and we say carbon dioxide, molecule of carbon dioxide formed by carbon and oxygen. When you say atoms, it refers to elements like hydrogen atom, oxygen atom, nitrogen atom, etc., etc. So, smallest particle which has all the properties of the element. And also the study of these atoms and molecules comes after Dalton's atomic theory. Who was Dalton? John Dalton is a scientist from England who found out a very famous theory called as Dalton's atomic theory. According to that, every element consists of small particles called as atoms, and then they are called postulates. Atoms are indivisible. Atoms of the same element have same mass, and like that, there are what is called postulates. So, the last postulate says two or more atoms combined together to form a compound, and these are the postulates of Dalton's atomic theory we already studied in the previous classes. Also, we know that two or more elements combine to form a new substance, and hence we have a reaction. For example, if you take a hydrogen, it combines with oxygen to form a compound called water. It is what is called as chemical reaction, is it not? So, even you can take the example of carbon plus oxygen gives carbon dioxide, is it not? Or if a metal combines with the non-metal and sodium combines with chlorine, it forms sodium chloride. Like that, these are called chemical reactions. When two or more substances combine, they form a new substance, and we call it as compounds. This we call it as elements. When I say elements, there will be solids, liquids and gases. And here hydrogen is a gas, sodium is a solid, carbon is a solid, and chlorine is a gas, oxygen is a gas. So, even mercury is the only one element which is liquid in the liquid state, metal which is a liquid state. So, that is what we have studied earlier as chemical reactions. Also, we know that every atom is made up of small particles called protons, neutrons, electrons. Where are the protons and neutrons situated? They are inside the innermost part, what you call it as nucleus. Suppose you take sodium, there are 11 protons and there are 12 neutrons. And how many electrons? Sodium has got 11 electrons, and these electrons are arranged in the different shells called as K shell, then you have L shell. All this you already studied, no? So in this L shell you will have 8 electrons, right? All these are electrons. They will be going round the nucleus. So 2 plus 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So these are all called electrons. What do they do? Electrons will be going round the nucleus. And these are called shells, also called as energy levels. So this is called K shell, this is called L shell, and also here you have the third orbit. What you call it as M shell. Third orbit refers to M shell. So that will be having, in this case you have only one electron. So what I am showing now is the fundamental particles, namely protons and neutrons, will be in the nucleus. They are also called as nucleons, and electrons will be going round the nucleus. So they will going round in fixed elliptical orbits, in fixed orbits. Okay, this is what is called as nucleus. You already studied that. And also we have studied about periodic classification. So what is periodic classification? Arrangement of elements. Is it not? That will be what is called as vertical columns. You call it as groups. Horizontal lines called as periods. Is it not? And they are classified into different what are called groups. There will be 18 groups vertical, and there will be how many? 7 periods. Is it not? So that's also you have studied. So we just had a glance about that. Now coming to today's topic, meaning of the word bond. Some of you might have heard about James Bond. That is a novel, very famous novel in English. So now we see the meaning of the word bond. Bond means close association, means close relationship. Where do you find this type of bond? Between father and mother. They will have a close understanding. Sometimes they may have some different opinion, but after some time they will become one, means they will have proper understanding. Parents and children, the love between parents and children, and a bond between close friends, your classmates, or maybe neighbors, of mutual understanding. And teacher and pupil, that is again a better bond. Bond of love, selfless love. And master of the house and pet animals. So this master of the house and pet animal, usually dog, if you take, faithful and friendly. Okay, so these are some of the bonds we see in your daily life. Means close relationship with each other. Is it not? And it is this bond only which will make us to live happily with each other. And in this bond, the greatest and the most important is the bond between God and devotees. For example, devotion of gopis towards Lord Krishna. You might have heard. Gopis means Krishna, Krishna means Gopi, Radha, Krishna, Krishna, Radha. And also Swami and his students. It is selfless, it is broad in nature, and students always think of Swami at all time, at all places. Swami also will be always thinking of students, their progress and all. So this is the highest order. We call it as devotion. So these are different types of bonds we find in the daily life, in our nature. Okay. Now coming to chemical bonding. So this is a plastic balls representing different atoms. Say here it refers to carbon and hydrogen. And this type of bond we find when atoms of the same elements combine, we get molecules of the elements. For example, you have hydrogen molecule, oxygen molecule, chlorine molecule, nitrogen molecule, etc., etc. They are called molecules. And in case of compounds, there will be different elements combined. For example, in case of water, it is H2O. And you can take the example of ammonia, NH3, methane, CH4. Okay. And you may have HCl. These are all different kinds of bond you find. And this is within different atoms. Here also this represents carbon, this represents hydrogen, this represents oxygen. So these are different kinds of bonds you find. This comes under organic chemistry, which you study later, okay. So chemical bonding. Now let us see what is meant by chemical bonding. For that you must know, why do atoms combine? Why this combination take place? It was found that noble gases did not react with other elements to form compounds. They are called non-reactive, also called as inert gases. In the periodic table, if you see, the 18th group elements are inert gases or noble gases. So in the initial stage, they were also called inert gases due to their non-reactive nature. Why does it do so? Because there are sufficient number of electrons in the outermost orbit. So thus in noble gases lack reactivity because of their specific electronic arrangement, which were quite stable. So here helium, for example, it will have 2 electrons. Then you have argon, neon, krypton, etc. will have 8 electrons. So they will be stable. So when they are not stable, then either by losing electrons or by gaining electrons, they want to become stable. So this is what we are just now told about inert gases. First one is helium. It has got only one shell. So maximum number of electron is only 2. Then comes neon, 2, 8, 10. First shell is 2, second shell is 8. Totally 10 electrons. Argon, 18, 2, 8, 8. So this is outermost. All of them have 8 electrons in the outermost orbit. And hence, this rule of getting 8 electrons in the outermost is called as octet rule. So argon 18, krypton 36, xenon 54, radon 86. These are called noble gases or inert gases. They are kept in the 18th group, and except helium, all of them have 8 electrons in the outermost orbit. Okay. Now what are the discoveries made to get this chemical bonding? So first discovery was atoms having 8 electrons in the outermost shell are very stable, and they do not react at all. So if they are not stable, say for example elements like hydrogen, sodium, chlorine, etc., which do not have 8 electrons in the outermost shell, undergo chemical reaction. So that means either they lose electrons or gain electrons, and hence they become stable. So to get the 8 electrons, when they become 8 electrons, they become stable, and thus atoms tend to attain a configuration in which they have 8 electrons in their outermost shells. This is a basic cause of chemical bonding. So chemical bonding means to become stable. To become stable. How to become stable? Either by losing electron or by gaining electron. They will resemble the inert gases or noble gases. In case of hydrogen, it may become helium to get 2 electrons. Other elements, it may become near to neon, argon, krypton, etc. Okay. So this type of bonding is called chemical bonding. Okay. And for example, here is a bonding between magnesium is shown. In magnesium, first orbit will have 2 electrons. There are 12 protons and 12 neutrons. Second, you have 8. Third, you have 2. 2, 8, 2. So 12 protons, 12 electrons and 12 neutrons. And when it loses 2 electrons during chemical reaction, it becomes magnesium ion. We call it as ion. This is a magnesium atom. When magnesium atom loses 2 electrons, it becomes magnesium ion. Why it is called so? Because there are 10 electrons only, but there are 12 protons. So protons will be more. 12 protons and 10 electrons. So we call it as magnesium ion. We represent it as Mg2+. And it is the attainment of 8 electrons for stable structure is called octet rule. Octet means to get 8. So here magnesium has the outermost 2 is lost. Then you have 8 in the outermost. This rule is called octet rule. Okay, very important. Attainment of 8 electron for stable structure is called octet rule. Except hydrogen, it may become helium. That is dual rule. Make him all other elements will try to become octet in the outermost orbit. So this octet rule explains the chemical bonding in many compounds. Now let us see one example as how these chemical bonds are formed. Atoms are held together in compounds by the force of attraction, which results in the formation of chemical bonds. Just as a mother loves her child, is a kind of bond. Child also, it will be playing with something. If any danger comes, immediately starts crying. Is it not? The mother will go to her help. That is a No, pure love, bondage of love there. And when a child is caught by the mother, child feels happy and comfortable in the lap of the or in the hands of the mother. So also elements also, they form a bond. There is a force of attraction between two elements, or it may be between the same element also. So the resulting compound is lower in energy as compared to some of the energies of the reacting atoms or molecules, and hence it is a more stable. For example, when sodium combines with chlorine, the energy of the sum of the sodium and chloride is more. So that's why the reaction takes place. And the stability of the compound formed is an important factor in the formation of chemical bonds. So stability means once a compound is formed, it cannot split up into elements. When a sodium chloride is formed, you cannot get back sodium and chlorine. That is the meaning. Because of the force of attraction. When a mother is in the hands of when the child is in the hands of the mother, it will not go to other hands. Because the bond between the child and the mother will be so strong. Is it not? So, similarly, we will check our understanding now. In the table given below, 3 elements and their atomic numbers are given. You must tell which is stable, which is not stable. So, atomic element number A has atomic number 10. Is it stable or not? And B, atomic number 36, and C, 37. How do you know it is stable or not? If there are 8 electrons in the outermost, it is stable. If it is not having 8 elements, then it is not stable. For example, in this case you have got 8 electrons, therefore it is stable, both of them are stable. And element C is not stable because it is more than 8 here, the outermost, and therefore we say it is unstable. So there is a, now let us see 2 types of bonding. One is called electrovalent bond or ionic bond. Second one is called covalent bond. So 2 types of bonding, ionic bonding and covalent bonding. And let us see one by one. The chemical bond formed by transfer of electrons from a metal to a non-metal is known as ionic or electrovalent bond. Why it is called ionic? Because the reaction between 2 ions comes. And one important point you must note. Here sodium, the configuration of sodium is 281 and this is 287. When sodium combines with chlorine, what happens? It becomes sodium chloride or it becomes stable. Is it not? So this bond between sodium and chlorine is called ionic bond, or is also called as electrovalent bond. Okay. Now let us just see how it forms. So this is actually the reaction taking place. How does it react? When sodium metal and chlorine gas are brought into contact, they react violently and we obtain sodium chloride. So sodium is a solid, chlorine is a gas. When they combine, they react to form sodium chloride. What is sodium chloride? Salt. And this sodium chloride neither the property of sodium nor the property of chlorine. Okay, sodium atomic number is 11, has 1 electron in the outermost shell. If it loses that electron, it is left with 10 electrons and become positively charged. Such a positively charged ion is called cation. Loss of electron results into formation of an anion, and this process is called ionization. So there are two kinds of ions. One is called cations, other one is called anions. In cations, they lose electrons. Metals like sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium, etc., they lose electrons. We call it as cations. And elements like chlorine, oxygen, nitrogen, etc., are called anions. In this case, after in a reaction, they lose electrons, and the electrons lost by them is attracted by anions, and this process is called ionization. Okay, what are ions? Ions are nothing but charged particles. Okay, and for example, in sodium chloride, outermost sodium contains 1 electron, chlorine contains 7 electrons. When they react together, it becomes sodium chloride. It is an ionic compound. Why it is called ionic compound? Because it is formed by the transfer of electrons. Okay, and hence also it is called as electrovalent compound. And that is one example. Transfer of 1 electron forms what is called ionic bond. And this is the actual structure of sodium 281, chlorine 287. This will lose 1 electron, will be lost, and it will be absorbed by chlorine, and hence it forms sodium chloride. Here the lost electron is gathered by this chlorine, hence it becomes chloride. Here there is a net positive charge because one of the electron is lost here. So positive, this is called cation, this is called anion, and the compound is called ionic compound. Okay. So this is exactly what happens in the ionic bond. So this, if you see in a different microscope, the structure of sodium chloride, this pink color represents sodium ions, green color represents chloride ions, and they are embedded to each other. And now let us see. So for octet arrangement, octet rule, sodium atom can acquire stability by changing into sodium ion. It requires an energy of 496 kilojoule per mole. What is joule? Joule is a measurement of energy, and in this reaction it requires about 496 kilojoules per mole. So chlorine atom completes its octet by gaining 1 electron from the sodium atom, and both sodium ion and chloride ion combine together form a bond that is called ionic bond, and they form sodium chloride. In this process, chlorine atom has gained an electron, an addition electron, and hence it has become negatively charged. It becomes 288. It was 287. When 1 is added, it becomes 288. And therefore we write Cl minus. The sodium loses one, therefore you write Na plus. So this is anion. Chloride ion is called anion. Sodium ion is called as cation. Okay. So here the formation of chloride ion from the chlorine atom releases 349 kilojoules. This is 496 in case of sodium. This is 349 kilojoule per mole. For 1 mole of chlorine, releases about 349 kilojoules of energy. Joule is a measurement of energy. That is how this ionic compound is formed. This is another type of photo of the sodium chloride. Here this red color represents sodium, cross section you can say, and this yellow color represents chloride ion. This sodium ion, chloride ion. This is a reaction. Sodium plus chlorine gives sodium chloride, and when you remove this plus and minus, you get it as NaCl. It becomes solid. Okay, and then we will see some more examples. So this bond is called electrovalent bond. The electrostatic force of attraction. Now a doubt will arise. Why do they attract? Why does sodium attract chlorine? The reason is there is a force of attraction. As a mother has attraction towards its child, a dog has an attraction towards its master. The master may come in any form, you plus note it. He may come in any dress, any type. Even if it comes, it will identify its master. That is a bond between the pet animal and the master. So also you have, there is a force of attraction that holds cation and anion, and this is called electrovalent bond or ionic bond. Okay, and this structure what you see just previously between sodium and chlorine is called as Lewis structures, because it was Lewis who found out this type of structures, how they are attracted to each other. Okay, for example, this is called Lewis structure. Here this red color represents sodium and this color green represents chlorine. In the sodium chloride crystal, we can see that each sodium is surrounded by 6 chloride ions. So each sodium covered by 6 sodium chloride ions, and each chloride is surrounded by 6 sodium ions, and it forms a solid state structure. The force of attraction between sodium and chloride ions is uniformly felt in all directions. So this is uniform structure. See the bondage, how beautiful it is it not? So very uniform it is. So each chlorine is surrounded by 6 sodium ions, and then each sodium is surrounded by 6 chlorine. So hence a crystal is formed, and that is what is called as lattice. The shape is called lattice. Each ionic compound has its own lattice. If you say magnesium oxide, it has one type of lattice. If you say potassium chloride, it has a lattice. So the shape is called lattice. It is called crystal. So the compound that is obtained is called sodium chloride crystal. Okay, and let us see the history behind it. In 1830, it was Michael Faraday, when we are doing experiment on electrolysis, showed that substances break into charged particles when dissolved in water, and they can conduct an electric current. He termed them as ions, means wanderers in Greek, and invented the term cation and anion for the positive and negative particles. For example, he did experiment with sodium chloride solution. Then it breaks up into sodium ions and chloride ions. In a long back, say about 200 years ago, it was discovered in 1830. In 1897, it was Thomson who discovered these cathode rays. So we have streams of free electrons which were somehow involved in bonding. He also proposed that the atoms in hydrogen chloride are joined by a tube of electromagnetic force. So they were using the word tube then. Later on they are called as bonds. Okay. So in like NaCl, in NaCl, in KCl and all that, they have got a kind of bond. He named it as tube. It was John J.J. Thomson. Okay. So one more example. So far we studied about sodium chloride. Let us see about magnesium chloride. In magnesium chloride, magnesium has atomic number 12. Its configuration is 282. K shell 2, L shell 8, M shell 2. Okay. Then it loses the last electron, the 2 electrons in the outermost orbit, it loses that electrons. We can achieve the stable configuration. So when this 2 electron, the outermost, it is lost, it becomes stable because there will be 8 electrons. It resembles noble gas, namely ion. So then Mg282 becomes magnesium ion plus 2 electron, and it resembles what is called as neon. So 1 Mg atom combines with 2 chlorine atoms and hence it forms magnesium chloride. It is ionic compound because the 2 electrons from magnesium will transfer to chlorine and hence it becomes magnesium chloride. So in this way, this is called a ionic reaction, and this bond is called ionic bond and the compound is called ionic bond, ionic compound. The 2 electrons lost by the magnesium are gained by each of the 2 chlorine atoms to give 2 chloride ions. So chlorine becomes chloride. So this chlorine gains 2 electrons which are lost by magnesium. Hence it becomes chloride ion. So magnesium and chlorine join together form a compound called magnesium chloride. It is a ionic compound, or it is also called electrovalent compound. Okay. So this is one more reaction, Mg2 plus, and these 2 electrons lost by magnesium is gained by chlorine. Hence a compound is formed called magnesium chloride. So one more way of writing it, configuration of magnesium is 282. This 2 split up into 1 here and 1 here. So then it becomes Mg2 plus. So when it is lost, this 2 is lost, it becomes ion, and that is gained by chlorine. You get 2Cl minus, and hence it forms a magnesium chloride which is a solid. Here magnesium is a solid, chlorine is a gas. When they combine, they form a compound called magnesium chloride. Similarly, the compounds like sodium oxide, calcium chloride, magnesium oxide are all formed by ionic bond. Most of the acids like sulfuric acid, hydrochloric acid, nitric acid, all this, and bases like sodium hydroxide, potassium hydroxide and all, and salts also. These are the salts. They all of them have what is called ionic bond or electrovalent bond. And the bond of love, what Baba says, Swami's message about bond of love. The first one is love is God, live in love. The whole universe is filled with that love. I gave the example of mother and child. Is it not? Or mother and children. And you can say a pet dog and a master. And a teacher and the students. So wherever you find, it is called love. That love is very sacred. It is pure. And Swami says, students are my property. He says these buildings, this land, all these are not real properties. They are also properties. But he says, students are my properties. And because he loves the students so much. Students also love Swami so much. So how do you develop love? It lives by giving and forgiving. Go on giving to others, love develops. And forgiving also. Somebody will hurt you by thought, word and action. Forgive. And how the self will, so as against this, love is selflessness. Self is lovelessness. Self lives by getting and forgetting. Taking things from others. Getting and forgetting. That is self. So love is giving and forgiving. Self is getting and forgetting. Okay, this is Baba's message about bondage of love. So you must tell what is your understanding of each of these quotations. So you have to share with your friends and the teacher. So what does this quotation stand for? Will you do it? Okay. Okay. Now we will see one interesting puzzle. This is called crossword puzzle. Here you have got like this vertical also and horizontal also. And the first question is bonding involving transfer of electrons. So answer for the first question is ionic. Ionic bond is formed by the transfer of electrons. Coming to second question. Second question is across like this. Rule for attainment of 8 electrons in the stable structure. That is called OCTET, octet arrangement. And third question is name given to positive ions. And they are called as, name given to positive ions are called as cations. And next question is process of formation of ions. So process of formation of ions is called ionization. Is it not? So cations are the positive ions, anions are the negative ions. And the name of the scientist or the structure is called word to describe the non-reactive noble gases. So they are called inert gases. Name given to negative ions, that is anions. And here you have structure showing the outermost electrons. They are called Lewis structure. Is it clear? So this is a beautiful, what you call crossword. There are two things. One is down. This is called across. Down means vertical. Across means horizontal. Okay. So this is the answers for all that. So try to understand yourself. Okay. Now coming to home assignments. First question. State the octet rule. Second, why noble gases are non-reactive? Third, name the two types of ions present in sodium chloride. Fourth, show the formation of sodium oxide, Na2O. Fifth, in sodium chloride lattice, How many chloride ions surround each sodium ions? Lattice means that structure of the sodium chloride. You will come prepared. Okay. Thank you.